Yes, indeed. That is right. I am your host. I am Kev Baker, and welcome back to another week of live radio right here on the Kev Baker Show, coming to you live from Smart City, Glasgow. Yes, all the way from Scotland via Truth Frequency Radio based in the USA. And I know that we go out worldwide. We've got listeners down under, Canada, we've got people over in Austria, as far flung as Ukraine and even Russia. Yes, let that one start a couple of rumours, no doubt. But it's absolutely a pleasure, an honour, and a privilege to speak to you right here where silence is consent. Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. And it's the start of a very big week right here on KBS, because tomorrow I am going to be joined by David Icke, no less. David will be coming onto the show, or at least I'll be speaking to David a number of hours before the show, and I will be premiering that interview live with all of you here tomorrow night. And I couldn't think of a better way to really kick off this momentous week here on the show with yet another really leading name when it comes to research coming out of the UK into not only ufology but paranormal and just the general geopolitical news as well. He's become a good friend over the years, and Ben Emlyn-Jones is here tonight. We had Ben on a couple of weeks ago, maybe just a week or so ago, but so much happens in the world that there's already so much for us to get into. We've had yet more news about disclosure. I done a show last week with Ryan Gable, and we were basically sounding the alarm, at least telling people to be on their toes, looking at alternatives to what might this actually be. And tonight we'll get Ben's take on all of that. It's going to be absolutely great to get into all of that good stuff. We're also going to be talking about the Maybot. Yes, Terry Mayhem, eh? I mean, Theresa May. She finally is leaving office. And I know Ben is somebody that keeps a very keen eye on all of the political shenanigans happening on this side of the pond. And the referendum, we're going to be talking about a possible never-endum and yet another kind of Tory leadership battle. We'll be getting Ben's thoughts on that. So much more along the way. We've got Whistles. He's in the green room as well. He's preparing for hour number 2. He'll be with us. So for anyone out there who hasn't heard of Ben before, you can check out his numerous websites, one of which is hpanwo.blogspot.com. And the main one that he likes to blog on and keep up to date with is hpanwo-voice.blogspot.com. And HPANWO, I hear you kind of asking, what is this? Raising an eyebrow out there. Well, that stands for Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. And Ben runs a website dedicated to latest news, views, and reviews from the world of government cover-ups, ghosts, UFOs, hospital porters, paranormal investigations, cryptozoology, hidden knowledge, forbidden history, archaeology, chemtrails, and so much more. And that's what makes him a perfect fit to come on to the Kev Baker Show to speak to all of you great people out there. Ben, welcome back, my good friend.
Oh, thanks, Kev. It's good to be back on the show. I've heard about being a tough act to follow, but I'll tell you what, this is a tough act to proceed because you have the one and only David Icke on your next show.
It's a thankless task, right? It's like being at the comedy store. You're like a comedian and you're told to warm up for some A-list comedian. But dude, like I say, I can't think of a better way to kind of kick off the week, because you yourself, a big admirer, a long-time fan of David Icke and his work. And I think we would both agree that there's a lot that we've learned from the stuff that David Icke has spoke about over the years. And in no small part, he put me where I am today, you know, and I'm sure if it hadn't been for David Icke and people like him, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing either.
I don't think so, Kev, because, I mean, he was very, very formative to me, actually, and especially when I first started getting into these kinds of issues. And he's a very, very good sort of gateway to all the other subjects that we talk about at the moment. And I know he's done a couple of live shows, and his new movie's out, and I just hope that these things go ahead, because there's been a massive amount of opposition to him. He seems to have really shuffled the cards, and he's really ruffled a few feathers, because everywhere he goes there's massive protests outside So that's got to be a good sign, I think.
Yeah, and
So,
we both had to go through the real kind of cloak and dagger mystery that is attending a David Icke conference. You get informed 24 hours beforehand. You meet up in a field, they put a black bag over your head, they take you to a secret location. Okay, maybe that last bit was a little bit embellished, but this is because people are scared of what he has to say. And it's not about reptilians, folks. It's not about anything that you would have the mainstream media have you believe it is. They just don't want you to hear David Icke cracking open the agenda and naming the people that are responsible for it and offering, solutions, answers, things for people to think about. That's what's dangerous about him, Ben.
Exactly, this is it. I mean, people say to themselves, well, how come he's still alive? Why haven't they assassinated him? Well, they've tried to assassinate his character. That's what they do these days. They've tried to make out he's some kind of monster. He's a Nazi, he's a racist, and all these other ridiculous accusations that they've leveled at him. When anyone who takes the just briefest of honest appraisals of his work will know that that's complete and total balderdash. But sadly, a lot of people believe it. There's a lot of unwilling and unknowing, far foolish people who act as the useful idiots for the New World Order who attack David.
And I still hear people, even in our arena, Ben, researchers and things, even they harp back to the days when it was all the reptilians and all that kind of stuff. And I really urge people to listen to what David's saying today, because he's basically decoding the world and the insanity around us. And he's been doing it since the early 90s,
Mm-hmm. He could have been a completely and utterly mainstream figure. He kept his head down, he kept his mouth shut. He'd be a very, very successful sports journalist. He'd probably be where Desmond Lynam ended up. And he's often said that he was going to be Desmond Lynam until Desmond Lynam came into his place. But he gave it up to pursue the life that he leads now. He gave it all up. It's nonsense that some people say it's just a money-making scam. That's another of the ridiculous accusations that are leveled against him. Well, you know how much people earn when they work in TV. David could have. It's a riches to rags story for David. He earns a living, but he doesn't earn as big a one as he would if he'd simply been a mainstream TV star. So please just shut up all these people who keep attacking him. Leave him alone. Just listen to what he has to say.
It's a very good point on the money. He was like the equivalent of your ESPN sports over there in the States. He was like one of the kind of maybe minor anchors of like Grandstand, and that's a really big BBC show. He done Match of the Day, things like that. So this is a guy who had the world at his feet, literally, if he was after fame and fortune, but he absolutely took a different route altogether. So tomorrow night, folks, David Icke live, almost live, right here on the Kev Baker Show. Now then, Ben, something we come back to talking about a heck of a lot is disclosure. You yourself have wrote 3 fictional books based upon the topic, and now we're back here again. Back in December 2017, the whole world awoke to the fact that something different was happening when it came to UFOs, UAPs, as we are now learning where to call them, unidentified aerial phenomenon, when all of the mainstream media all of a sudden took a different attitude to reporting a story that came out of the Pentagon, and this was Luis Elizondo telling us all about the ATIP, the Advanced Aero Threat Identification Program. Now, back then we were discussing this. We said, what's going to happen next? Do we think disclosure's coming? There was a bit of a hiatus for me anyway, and for many other people looking at this kind of information out there. That big kind of aha moment, another revelation coming from authority. It wasn't quick to come, but now, Ben, here we are, and talk about golden revelations. I mean, we know that the Pentagon have had these programs running in the background. They've probably had various other programs of acronyms we've never learnt yet. But for them to come out and make an admission to the New York Post, well, this is big news, and that's why I'm really looking forward to getting your take on this, Ben.
Very much so. Yeah, Kev, we were talking about this on the last show, weren't
Yep.
we? Do you remember? We were talking about how the US Navy has developed a new system for reporting UFOs, and we were discussing, well, what does it all mean? Is it significant at all? Well, now we can see that it is actually. This is something that came out just on last Friday. And it was really amazing. The Christopher Sherwood, who's a Department of Defense spokesman, official serving DoD spokesman told the New York Post that the government does indeed, or did have, a program to investigate the UAPs. Now, they don't use the term unidentified flying objects. Obviously, that in popular culture, there's a lot of connotations and baggage associated with that. They say unidentified aerial phenomenon. But basically, they were using what he described is basically the same thing that Luis Elizondo did in December 2017, which is an extraordinary revelation there from the contemporary US DoD. Nick Pope, bless his heart, he called it a bombshell. And he is prone to overstatements sometimes, but really, I mean, I went to see, there's an interview on the New York Post with John Greenwald of the Black Vault. Now, he was one of the most cautious people who came forward to actually commentate on the original revelations in December 2017. And he's been accused of pouring cold water on it quite effectively. He made some good points, though, but even he was really impressed by what has happened. He was really
yeah, because I actually had the chance to speak to John, and John runs the website The Black Vault, like Ben was saying there, and he's somebody from the age of 15 who's basically, with freedom of information requests, looked for the documentation coming from the highest level, something that you can hold in your hand and use as evidence, you know. And like you say, Ben, we brought up ATIP, or I asked him about ATIP to the Stars Academy, all that kind of stuff. And he was very, very on the fence altogether, because he was talking about a timeline that he had made from 2017 until then. And he says, you know, even the people that are meant to be the ones that have brought us information on this, even they don't really check out some of the stuff that they're saying. So for me to hear him in this interview now saying that this was huge news in the space of like maybe a month or so, that was a big kind of change in his attitude. And I suppose we should be excited, right?
Yeah, right? I think so. I mean, I was, after the initial explosion of information and of hope in December 2017, the whole thing stagnated a bit through 2018. I mean, the original to the Stars Academy conference and press conference, it did involve a photograph of some balloons, a bunch of balloons over Manchester in England, and this is actually a piece of evidence is not real UFOs at all. And what's more, it's been very, very easily discredited. Indeed, my friend Steve Mehrer, he actually was the guy who looked into this, and he's the one who could have told them. All they had to do was ask him, and he would have told them that it's just a cluster of mylar balloons. But yet they presented this at the first TTSA conference. And so then, of course, everything went quiet for a long time. They sent the merch emails out as usual and things like that. And I was on their mailing list, and I got them every so often. But I thought to myself, is this going to go anywhere? Is this going to stagnate and we're not going to hear anything more about it? Well, Kev, it's not stagnated. I mean, 2019 is really shaping up to be a pretty exciting year in terms of what we've just heard. Now, obviously, this is not something that will just happen spontaneously. There's confirmation from the US Department of Defense. So why are they saying it now? I mean, is this going to be a precursor to more information coming from them? That's what I want to know. I'm quite excited to hear what they have to say next.
Absolutely. And Ben, I was speaking with Ryan Gable just the other night, and it was on the same day this news came out from the New York Post. However, we didn't have it in our news pile, our stack for the show. Now, we were also kind of sounding the alarm as well, and I'll tell you why we were doing that, Ben. It's because myself and you, we're the perfect examples here, okay? We've basically spent a lifetime wondering, imagining, yearning for truth about what's out there, what's in the skies above us, things like that. And we have to be very, very careful ourselves and everyone out there included that we don't fall into that confirmation bias, because here's a Pentagon, here's a government organization that have done their utmost to cover up the truth for however many decades, and now all of a sudden, because they're telling us slightly the kind of stuff that we want to hear, you know, not that I'm saying it's fake or anything, Ben, please don't think I'm saying that, but at the same time, we can't just dive all in and take everything at face value, because like you explained there's already been a problem with at least one of the videos that have come out through TTSA to the Stars Academy, and of course that's come out via Elizondo and his ex-government cohorts that are kind of moving between government and Tom DeLonge with the information. So, the confirmation bias, and we have to think, why now, like you say, and at the same time, just be open-minded to something bigger than that disclosure moment that we've all been waiting for. But what would you say to that, Ben?
I think that's a very wise way to look at it. I mean, I think you have to strike a balance between excessive skepticism and excessive naivety.
That's a brilliant way to put it, because sometimes I feel like I'm debunking things too much. And then other times I think, well, I can't, just kind of do away with logic. And then you think, well, where do you lie here? I mean, do you fall on this side of the argument or that side of the argument? So I'm glad you've brought that up.
I do want to give this a chance. I mean, obviously something is going on. It's not the idea that I don't think anyone. I mean, the skeptics obviously will still double down and they'll stick by their line that basically there's nothing here to see there at all. It's all just delusion. They'll never give that up. I mean, they're never ever going to back down on that. However, it's pretty clear that it's not just delusion. I mean, whatever is going on here, it's something real. They do have the fact that they made all these various statements does indicate something is going on here. It's something real. This doesn't mean they're going to tell us the whole truth straight off. This could be another form of disinformation, but it's obviously, if it's a piece of disinformation, it's obviously intended to disinform about something real. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
And even disinformation, the best disinfo, and this is me speculating here, but if I had to put disinfo out, you weave it in amongst truth. You gain the public's trust with something real like this, something to hook them in first, and then maybe the next episode, the next event, the next release. But it's weird. I don't know, Ben, I'm with you. There's something going on here. Possibly, I was wondering about this, with our advances in technology, have we come of age? We talk about how when we started splitting the atom and we messed about with nuclear stuff, in particular weapons, we see the uptick in UFO activity around locations that house these weapons. Could it be then, and again, speculation here, folks, but AI, have we now reached almost some kind of level where the AI is such that perhaps that has put us on the radar of some other entities out there? Maybe we've reached a level of technology now where disclosure has to come because we're going to level 2.
Well, as the late, great Jim Mars has said, someone looked at us and says, oh, my God, the kids have found the matches.
Yep.
I think with the detonation of the first atomic bombs in 1945, it may well have maybe put us on the map, may have marked our card slightly in terms of the universal community. And that we've, in a sense, have come of age. We've entered a new level of civilization. And indeed, there does seem to be, I mean, if you can gauge anything from the behavior of whatever it is behind the UFO phenomenon, the focus on nuclear weapons is very, very distinct. And there's many cases involving nuclear weapons facilities. The Rendlesham Forest incident of 1980 is the classic one. But I myself have taken a photograph of a UFO photograph. I didn't see the UFO at the time, but it appeared in the photograph afterwards, and I think we discussed this on a previous show. It was actually pretty close to where your neck of the woods, Kev, actually. It was the Firth of Clyde, just west of Glasgow. And in the photograph, I've actually taken a photograph of a beautiful location in that area, which is a lovely area. But you can see quite clearly in the one part of the photograph, you can see the nuclear weapons facility at the Trident Centre at Faslane on Gairloch and the weapons storage facility near there. So that's another example in my personal life. Now, so whatever what they are, where they come from, I don't know. But I think the idea that this is some kind of double bluff involving a real concern to do with foreign power, say some new weapon from Russia or from China, or from one of the ever various rival nations of the United States, I don't think it holds water, Kev. It's firstly that the phenomena we're looking at here don't seem to bear any resemblance to anything even proposed in the scientific world. You know, large objects that can move like no aircraft can move, for example. There's no drone that can do that we know of, or even on the drawing board that we know of that could do that. They go quite close to where there's naval exercises and things like that. They seem to fly over nuclear power stations. They sometimes appear over cities. What they are, I don't know. Where they come from, people say extraterrestrial. They may be from other planets. They may be from other dimensions. They may be some creatures that live under the sea or something. I don't know. But they obviously are interacting with us. They're aware of there's an intelligence behind this. Obviously, there's some kind of non-human intelligence behind this, and they're aware of our presence. They're aware of us, and they're interacting with us. They're monitoring us. They seem to have an awareness of us as much as we do of them. So I think this revelation from the U.S. Department of Defense indicates that the government are almost coming to terms with this in a public arena. It doesn't mean they're going to not continue to mislead us. I think they have to try something to mislead us. But isn't it exciting, Kev, that they're actually saying this now? I wonder where this is going to go.
Oh, absolutely. Get the popcorn out and get the six-pack out, feet up. Let's check out where we're going. At the same time, let's think about our good friend Gary Heseltine. And he's been on both our shows lately, I believe. And when he was on my one, he was talking about going to Moscow recently and meeting up with some Chinese, some Russian people there. And long story short, they were going to go about some kind of actual orchestrated international effort that would culminate with them going to the UN with some kind of proposal, some kind of request about the UFO truth, for lack of a better term. When you see other countries, proposed or supposed superpowers, enemies out there, threatening to bring about disclosure, do you think that could be speeding the Pentagon up as well? You know, you don't want to be the one left sitting there looking like the ones that held on to it all, right?
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the important point. I mean, Stephen Bassett has talked about this a lot. Now, some people have said to me, and I understand their point, that you can't have disclosure. They can't confess to this. I've often made this point myself, and there's a part of me that has not let this go. I mean, I'm very much split over this whole issue internally. But if, for example, as we've talked about on other programs, that things aren't necessarily going the way the New World Order wants them to go, it's possible that the breakdown of their plan, for whatever plans they have, could involve disclosure. It could be disclosure, could be, for example, one of the things that goes wrong, which ends up happening against their will. I mean, that's good news, because if there's disclosure happens, then I think they can say kiss goodbye to the New World Order, because I don't see how it could happen with disclosure, quite frankly.
You know, I used to think, Ben, that we were mature enough now as a species to take this. I think I need to reassess my take on that, though, and I'll tell you why. You know, you think of that moment, and it's always been said years ago that maybe they didn't want to disclose the truth because people that were, you know, devoutly religious and things, they would absolutely lose their minds. They wouldn't know what to do, stuff like that.
So Brookings Institute.
Yeah, right? And I think over time, you know, like I say, we've matured, or I thought we had. And then the end of Game of Thrones happened, and you see people melting down to the point where they have to phone up for counselling. They can't get out of bed. People are having to take sick days because of the end of a TV show. And as much as I love that TV show, right, isn't that symptomatic, you know, of where we are as a civilization today, that we can't even handle the end of a TV show? What on earth's name are these people going to do, Ben, when they have their come to the aliens moment? Makes the mind boggle, right?
I do understand. I do realise that I don't think it's possible for this particular. I don't think we can actually cross this line without paying a price, and there's going to be some form of civil unrest. I think that's absolutely inevitable. I've had to think a lot about this, because basically this is a part of the storyline of my books that I've written, the 3 books that I've written on the disclosure issue. What will happen? I don't know exactly what the effect will be, but as you said, there are some people, not everyone. I think some people, I think you and I won't have a problem with this. But in fact, for us, it'll be something wonderful. But there are some people that this will rock their worldview so intensely that they may not be able to survive psychologically. And if you get a large number of people like that, you end up with some kind of social disintegration. And that's going to happen, I think. It's inevitable that something like that will happen. It may not be as bad as all the doom and gloom mongers think. I don't think it's going to be like total societal breakdown.
Just when the EU's falling apart, they're going to play the last card of the alien invasion to bring about global kumbaya. Who knew it, folks? Ben Emlyn-Jones is here with me. We are almost on the break. Please remember, check out Ben. He's all over social media, like I am. Go to his websites. And the one that I'll plug right now, we'll get more after the break. It's hpanwo-voice.blogspot.com. TFRlive.com. You can keep up to date with all of Ben's speaking arrangements that he's got going on. You know, this was the year, I think, that Ben had his first international speaking gig. And of course, he's got 3 books out. We'll find out more about them after the break. Before getting back into, are we approaching disclosure? We'll be right back. Ben Emlyn-Jones is here with me in the virtual house tonight, and we're broadcasting to you live at Glasgow here in Scotland via the Truth Frequency Radio Network, www.tfrlive.com. Remember, head on over to the chat room at tfrlive.com/chat. It adds an entirely new dimension, you know, just the way a D-Wave does to the whole TFR experience. And taking a look in there, you know, wow, we have got TFR royalty in the chat room. Cherie Geo hanging out with the Wookiees in the chat room. So please, folks, you can head on over there, chill out and listen to myself and Big Ben Emlyn-Jones. And we're getting into disclosure. And regular listeners of the show will be thinking, Kev, you can take so many different sides and stances and looks at disclosure. Just where do you come down on all of this? I'm keeping an open mind, folks. I'm trying to fly above it all. I'm trying to look at this 360. I'm trying not to let my biases skew what I'm seeing. I'm excited, I am, but at the same time, very wary when the government tell us anything. And I know Ben's right there with me as well. And Ben, we go to some really extraordinary lengths sometimes to get UFO truth. And you were telling me during the break there about one of the most bizarre places on your travels that you've been lately, somewhere called the In and Out Club, right?
Yeah, well, this is back in 2014. It was a few years ago, but I had a very weird experience there one evening, and I'm no closer to really finding an answer to what happened that evening. This was in May 2014. I was invited to an event in London. It was a performance by something called the Light Modulation Limited at an address in London. And I was invited there by my friend Dave Hodrian, who I think you've had on the show. He's been on my show too.
Nice guy.
And he's a lovely chap, yeah, from Birmingham, the Birmingham UFO group. And
From
he said he's doing a
Birmingham.
presentation.
He's got that Birmingham accent.
Yes, he's another baldy like me. Yeah. And he was doing this. He was doing a presentation for Light Modulation Limited at this address in London, and he invited me along to go with him as a guest. And I went along. And when I went there, it was in the heart of London, in the sort of posh area where you get those big tall houses with big basement things and everything. And I thought, what's going on here? And I went in, and it was a place called the In and Out Club, which is a very elite London club. And it's actually Prince Charles is a member, although I didn't see him there.
I'm looking at this. This is like the In and Out Naval and Military Club. Now, this wouldn't exactly be on my top 3 locations if I was to pick out, you know, somewhere to go for a UFO gig.
I know.
Strange. So how did it go when you were in there, man?
Well, I went out there, and they wouldn't let me go in through the front door because I wasn't dressed properly. I had I was just dressed normally, but it was apparently this is a very formal location. I mean, I had my friend Heidi with me, and luckily it's not one of these places you can bring women in there. Some of them are still men only, but luckily this one wasn't. But we still had to go around to the back door and go in through the kitchen because we weren't dressed properly. And I got in there, and I did feel very underdressed, but no one had told me that it was going to be in a place like this. And indeed, Dave looked as confused as I did because when he came to do his talk. In the grounds of this very, very grand location, there's a big inflatable, like it was almost like an IMAX theatre that had been set up there in a big inflatable location, building like a tent. And there was some people. Some people there who were not your average UFO conference attendees.
Well, just to give the people a kind of taste of what Ben's talking about here, I'm on the website and it says forthcoming events, you know. Little fireside chat with Professor Derek Ward Thompson. No, I've no clue what Professor Derek Ward Thompson's into, but I can picture it, man. They're all going to have like their dinner jackets on, their cravats, they'll have their big cigars out. Dude, they're probably smoking cigars in there that me and you, that's more money than we'll make in a lifetime for one cigar. This is a bizarre place for a UFO gig, but you had a little thought about what it might mean, you know, why? Because compare it to other UFO events. We went to the one in Glasgow together, Ben. Was it similar people that you've seen there to what you've seen at the In and Out Club?
Absolutely not. I mean, it was a completely different clientele. I mean, I met a few of them, and they were very nice. I mean, one chap came up to me and he's dressed in his suit, and he says, "Hello there." He said, "Jonathan Phillips, how do you do?" And he was very posh accent and everything. And I spoke to him, and there was another guy, an Australian guy. He was an engineer, and he wanted to know. He asked me all sorts of questions about UFOs. But these are people I'd never seen before, and some of them were really obviously quite minted. I mean, there were some men in very, very posh suits, and I listened in on their conversation, and they were saying things like, "I've just had a message from our Singapore office," and things like that. And they had some women with them, like their wives were there, and they were like wearing posh dresses and they had like diamond bracelets and earrings, and the men had like gold Rolex watches, and I thought, what the hell is this place? And I looked at me and Dave, we linked eyes, and he was like as baffled as I was. So, and I can't help thinking, is this some kind of disclosure promotion thing? I mean, Steve, I spoke to Steve Bassett about this actually, and he was very interested in what I'd actually experienced, about whether what we were talking about before the break, that there are maybe different elements within the government who are seriously considering the possibility of just coming clean and just telling everyone what's really going on. And maybe this was some attempt to sell that to some very elitists, some billionaires, some senior government officials, and people like that, people within the royal family, senior ex-military people and stuff like that.
Ben, what if, right? And I mean, there's no way we could identify all of the characters that are responsible and part of this global cartel, the cabal, the deep state, whatever bloody name people want to put on it, right? But we look at how these plans have been centuries long in the making, taking us towards this global government. I get that. However, look how rapidly the world and people have changed over the past 20 years, probably say since 9/11. Anyone after that, totally different character. They were the internet their whole life. It's different now to be a human than it was for us growing up. And I wonder if that also goes over for these billionaires. We see the older ones, they're getting older, and there's the new kind of generation coming forward. And I'm not trying to give them any slack here, folks, but what if they're just like us? What if they're sick of this as well? Yeah, they're probably greedy for the money and things, but like I said to you, I imagine their dinner parties, Ben, they end up talking about the similar kind of stuff that we talk about on this show, across the network, on your show. People call it the woo. They're interested. They're just like us in the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite fashionable these days, Kev, to be a pessimist. And I mean, I encounter people all the time who just, every time you say anything about what's going on in the world, they'll say, that's what the Illuminati want. It's the Illuminati behind that. And if you say something like, if anything happens that makes it appear that the Illuminati might be having a bit of trouble and there's a bit of a spanner in the engine room, so to speak, they say, no, Ben, no. That's what the Illuminati want. It's just getting so subtle now that they make it look like it's what they don't want. Whenever their plans appear to be breaking down, that's just a sign that their plans are going ahead. And I think to myself, right. Oh, yeah, Ben, can't you see it? I'm a lot cleverer than you are, Ben, because I can see these sort of things and stuff like that. I have these conversations all the time with people. But Kev, what if things don't go their way? I mean, it was Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was written by a very, very wise man called J.R. Tolkien, who was very much in touch with deep spiritual forces and things like that. Gandalf once says, there are forces for good at work in the world as well as evil. Because we do seem to, I think a lot of people in our community do seem to think that there is only evil at work in the world, and it's basically just a few of us who are against it. But what if that's not the case? What if the forces of good are actually coming forward and they're gaining strength? And that's what I hope. Obviously, that's what I'd like it to be. And I hope I'm right. And there's wishful thinking involved on my part. But I mean, just because there's wishful thinking involved doesn't mean necessarily that what I'm thinking is false.
I'm with you. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of wishful thinking, because if there is anything to, and I think there is, the power of intent, the law of attraction, our shared consciousness, whether we're aware of it or not, if we can build up that resonance, and it's a positive one, and we all have that same positive, optimistic outlook, then how the hell do we know that doesn't have some kind of influence on collapsing all of those many probabilities that the future holds into a more select kind of targeted path that puts us towards good. Same as technology, same as anything. Good and evil on either side of it. Depends who's wielding it, right? But it's the same for
Exactly.
society. It's the same for us as well. And I know it's almost like Stockholm syndrome to sit here and think that our abusers are going to actually wake up one day and make it a world that we all want to live in. However, there is that X factor, Ben. There's always that chance that, things won't be as bad as we all feared, and things will turn out just like we want and even better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to have any hopes I have. If I build up any hopes, I don't want to have them dashed. But it'd be even worse, I think, if I actually turn away from something that good that happens in the world and just dismiss it as non-existent. And for it to happen would be, I think, I'd be kicking myself. You know what I mean? So I'm going to give this a chance, Kev. I'm going to go with this idea. I'm going to entertain the idea, not necessarily accept it, that perhaps this is a turning of the tide, and that what I experienced in that very, very strange evening in London, and indeed several other things that have happened lately, including what's happened with the Pentagon, what they've just been talking about, could be a sign that there is a shifting of the tide, Kev. I mean, maybe. I mean, if so, then that's wonderful.
Ben, all we are left to do, and all we can do in this case, is offer our opinion. We've got the data that came from the Pentagon now. We've got that, and we're left to make of that what we will. And until something else happens, like I say, all we can do is discuss it. We can look at the various options. We can keep our minds open. But that's all it is. It's just one piece of information from the Pentagon that in reality, it was a no-brainer anyway, right? From an enemy technology point of view, although these things, like you say, Ben, they display otherworldly type physics, It just makes no sense whatsoever for a military to ignore something in the sky that they can't identify, because it could realistically be enemy stuff up there. So they've admitted what we already know. So now we have to see what spins off the back of this. Is it that moment where they tell us what they've got, or is it something else? So as with everything these days, Ben, you know what I tell people to do? We provide and let them decide.
Exactly.
Because there's just not enough info yet.
There's not enough yet. This is early days. This is literally breaking news. It's just literally 4 days old, this news. So we don't know yet. I know Richard Dolan has done a couple of videos about it. Is
he excited?
Yeah, his videos are very interesting, actually. So there is something out there. And to be honest, we've been saying this. People like us have been saying this right along. We've been saying the government are taking an interest in this. We know that they just say, oh, it's all nonsense. No, we're not interested in anything. We're not paying attention to this. It's all lunacy. But we know deep down they've always been doing it. And we've said this many, many times, and people didn't believe us. Well, it's true. We've said it. They've said they're not doing it. They've said they denied they're doing it when we asked them straight out. Well, they're lied, and they are. And from their point of view, it's to be understandable. If you were a government and you were in charge of airspace, and for instance, you're in charge of the defence of the realm, and there's something flying around up there, and it may not come from another country, it may come from further afield, but you have a vested interest in monitoring and seeing how to control that threat, because it could be a threat. I mean, you know what its capabilities are. You don't know what its intent is. So if it has a hostile intention, then it is a threat. So you have to assume that the possibility that it has a hostile intention and act accordingly. And so what is actually happening, what the response from the government and from the defense agencies is exactly what you would expect if there was some kind of extraterrestrial presence on the Earth which had ability to interact with us in the way they do. So we shouldn't be surprised, really, Kev. It's just the people who are surprised, I think, are the people who just didn't believe us.
No,
and just
absolutely.
had their head in the sand.
And I'm not saying that if I had to put all my eggs in one basket, I would go for this option. But think about exotic technologies, and you can go back to World War II, stories of the Bell. That was a long time ago now. And with the advancements in AI, quantum computing, stuff like that, maybe we are on the cusp of learning about new propulsion systems, the kind of things that we would need to take us out further afield than Mars, places like that. Again, I'm not saying that's the case, but hypothetically, if Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, one of these companies were working on something like that, and again, it's employing physics that we don't recognize here necessarily, even pilots in the Navy are going to think that's a UFO, a UAP, because compartmentalization, it's a secret program in my hypothetical scenario here. And again, Ben, again, that's like way out in the left field. I'm not saying this is why we're getting this release right now, but just to show that the military in particular, it's a need to know basis, and you could be looking at your own technology, albeit secret, and not know anything about it.
It's there's no doubt, I think, that the government do have technology that they haven't released to the public. Some of it they might have gained actually from the crash retrievals of real extraterrestrial craft, such as the Roswell incident, and others, as you just said, were developed by powers on the Earth. For example, you mentioned the Nazis and you mentioned the Bell. There's many other examples. There's Thomas Townsend Brown, who in the 1920s was working on electrogravitic propulsion, that is using electromagnetic fields to cancel out the Earth's gravity and make something effectively weightless within a gravitational field. And it seems that the Bell, as it's called, or the Beehive, the people who were developing it under the Nazis, such as Hans Kammler, they were working on the same thing. And interestingly, Hans Kammler disappeared at the end of the war, along with a lot of other people. Now, at the end of the war, with the destruction of Nazi Germany, the victorious Allies divided the spoils, which included technology and included personnel. And this is not a secret. There's such thing as Operation Paperclip, where a lot of these scientists from Germany did go and work for the victorious Allies. The best known of these is Werner von Braun, the rocket scientist who built the Apollo rockets.
The last card, Ben. The last card.
Ah, yes. Of course, and I think he had some insider information. But there were many, many others, and some of them were actually sequestered under false identities. There's a guy called, there's several, Mengele, Joseph Mengele. I mean, I've been looking into where he ended, what happened to him at the end of the war, and he actually ended up working in the United States under the name Brian Greene. There are several other examples as well. So the Soviet Union got some of them, but America got most of them. But they would have continued to work on this in secret, you can bet. And then the thing is about this, you might say, well, why? How come we're still launching rockets? How come Elon Musk is doing a big victory dance over the fact he launched 70 rockets or whatever, however, 60 rockets, I believe it was the other day. Because rockets, in a way, they're very spectacular.
60 satellites before my haters come in and say, see, you put out misinformation, Baker.
Yeah, blame me for that, mate. I'm the one who I've not looked into it, so listeners blame me for that. But he launched, it was a record-breaking number of satellites, and he's been on TV doing a big fertility dance about the whole thing. But really, I mean, the rocket itself really is a pretty substandard method of traveling in space. You can basically you go a few miles up, and that's about it.
It's like strapping yourself to a really elaborate technological firework.
That's literally what it is. It is a firework is a small rocket, and it's old technology. I mean, the Chinese developed them in about the first few centuries BC. They had rockets. So if we're going to go into space, then we're going to need these electrogravitic craft. At the same time, if they've been developed in private and secretly, maybe people are in the secret government, the breakaway civilization, as Richard Dolan calls it, are doing just that. And so that's what's strange that last year we had President Trump announcing the Space Force, the creation of a Space Force. Now, he didn't give any details. He didn't give any details about what kind of hardware this Space Force would have. He just said he was going to introduce a Space Force. And that's got everyone wondering what's going on. And then this comes out, what we've just been talking about.
And I think, let's keep it going, because we're flying above it all. We're trying to get, that aerial kind of perspective so we can see things, not just that's happened recently, but let's go even a couple of years further back as well. We can go to May 13th, round about this time of year, in 2014, Ben, and we can see another big kind of change in opinion here coming from the Vatican. And it's Pope Francis says he would baptize aliens. Who are we to close doors? Now, that might seem quite comical to some people out there. Other people, the minute they hear the name the Pope, they get angry. But I think that's quite important. That's almost a landmark statement there, because it showed a change in the attitude of the church. And we've seen how that's been really watered down and altered during Pope Francis's kind of stay in there. But that in itself, the fact they're talking about and being willing to accept and bless alien life, again, that's something else I think we have to put on our little crime board here. Might be connected, might not. I'm thinking there's a longer game here. almost like they're getting us ready for truth or something.
Yeah, it could be that Pope Francis, someone's had a word in his ear and told him some things that are coming in the pipeline, and he's decided to make a statement which I don't think he wants the church falling behind on any new development that might be coming. So if some revelation does emerge, he can always say, well, I said from the beginning, I baptize aliens, and it's almost like he wants the church to be up to date, and he wants the church to be on the ball when this suddenly kicks off.
And I get it, Ben. I get it. Remember,
leaders.
we were talking about people losing their mind. I get it. I mean, what's his flock? Over 1 billion people or so?
Yeah.
So if he's saying chill out, it's cool. I get how that can have that psychological effect. And again, though, isn't that almost as if it's part of a longer program then? Something that may be in the works, and now we're starting to see acceleration towards something. Again, this is why I try to stay kind of non-biased, non-partisan in all of this. Just look at the facts, because I do get excited, Ben, I do.
Me too, yeah, and there is a trend. It does seem that there is a convergence of all these different lines of information. I mean, first, he's not the first religious leader to talk about this situation. The Archbishop of Canterbury, not the current one, but the last one, he made a statement about aliens as well. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was saying that he believed that there was life on other planets. He says, given the size of the universe, he said that it would be, he didn't believe that God would create such a huge universe and just leave one little speck with any life on it, which is the Earth. And that was a interesting thing to say. I mean, it makes sense from a theological point of view, actually, but it was interesting that he said it. It was interesting that he's the first one to publicly to discuss that in the mainstream. And I thought to myself, why now? It's almost like, again, there's something in the background which is inspiring these people, and it could be leading up to something. That's the way I see it. I don't know for certain, but it could be, Kev. It really, really could. It would be a good job, I think, if it does happen.
Well, I would love it. I already thought, way back when I was a child, if somebody had said to me, Kev, 42 years old, where do you think we're going to be as like a technologically kind of spacefaring civilization? I'd have pointed to something like Star Trek, something like that, dude. I thought we'd have been there by now. Maybe we're just starting to catch up. Who knows? But you mentioned there, and you've mentioned it a couple of times tonight, Roswell. The fact that possibly we've had some kind of evidence that was retrieved from there. What other cases, if you had to name two, UFO detective, going back in the cold cases, Ben, apart from Roswell, what two would you say could hold evidence that we're looking for, that smoking death ray?
Oh, there's many. There's many. I mean, there's been many Roswell-type events. But in terms of the most significant cases, one of them, of course, is the Rendlesham Forest incident, because that is... not only is that a very significant witness, there's very significant witness testimony to that, but the fact that the flow of information was pretty much on the go from day one. I mean, it didn't take long for the testimony to come out. It didn't take long for the release of information to the media. And that, for me, makes it a very, very important case indeed. As for another, I mean, there's so many I'm not sure which to choose from, Kev. I mean... it could be the Phoenix Lights. I think that's an important case, because first of all, you have a mass sighting over a built-up area, over a city of 1 million people. You have a large number of witness testimonies to it. A lot of people have spoken out. You have the cover-up, and not only do you have the cover-up, but you have the confession of a cover-up from the person instigating the cover-up. That is Governor Fife Symington. So that, I think, is also an extremely important case. It's thing is, the UFO phenomenon is just so prevalent in our world. It's just going on all the time. Right now, as we're doing this show, somebody's probably seeing a UFO somewhere in the world. They're as common as the aircraft are flying above our heads, as the Right Honourable Paul Hellyer said, Minister of Defence for Canada.
And it's okay us calling them UFOs here, but the governments, and our government included, because Nick Pope told us so we must believe it, that they use the acronym UAPs. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. And I think we have to really almost change that, change the language that we're using as well, because that UFO thing, for so many out there in the public, Ben, that aren't listening to shows like this and others here on this great network, you say that 3-letter acronym and it already ticks off little kind of green men in the mind the little kind of crazy music. And that's no fault on anyone out there, because remember, that's the way the media programmed them. And it was only back in 2017 we seen that change. It became a serious kind of topic out there. But yeah, we're almost coming up on the break. Don't want to get cut off. Before we get there, tell people how they can find your books and when they can listen to you, man.
Oh, right. Well, I have a radio show like yourself, Panro Radio. I have my website, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. My books, Roswell Rising, Roswell Revealed, and Roswell Redeemed. It's a fictional portrayal of the whole disclosure issue and everything attached to it. So if you enjoy what you hear on this show, you'll love those books.
You certainly will. And of course, disclosure, a topic that myself and Ben now have been talking about ever since we first teamed up right here on the Kev Baker Show. And when we first teamed up here, there was a third person as well, Johnny Whistles. And I see him hanging out in the TFR chat room. He's going to be joining us after the break. And don't forget, coming up after the second hour of today's show, don't go anywhere, because Lucky and Dr. Brooks Agnew, they are on the way with another Quantum Connections. So, like Whistles always says, you know, dinny touch that dial. So while we're away during the break, go and get yourself a quick drink, quick cup of tea, and we'll be back with more from Ben Emlyn-Jones. I'll be getting his thoughts on, well, we'll probably stick on disclosure. Whistles will have a lot to say there. But then I want to find out what's going on with the never-endum. Yes, Brexit. To Brexit or not to Brexit? That's the question. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2 right now on today's Kev Baker Show on TFRlive.com. Truth Frequency Radio, where silence is consent and where we give you the very best of protection from deception. Got Ben Emlyn-Jones with me, the man behind Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. And what a way to start off the week. A huge week here on the Kev Baker Show. David Icke will be here tomorrow. We've got Johnny Whistles for hour number 2 today. Whistler, welcome back to the fray, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Kev. Thanks very much. Had a bad week, as you know, last week, Kev. But hopefully I'll get my results back pretty soon. They should be ready. I'm going to give them a call, maybe see what's happening. But the last day or so, been really good, so everything's cool, Kev.
Well, this is where we take you away from all of that stuff and we get into topics that we've been talking about for years. Whistles and myself and Ben, we were offering our take, our opinion, our excitement at times about the Pentagon coming out and admitting that they do investigate those things, those UFOs, or as they call them, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Now, I don't know how much of the first part of the show you caught, but what's your thoughts on that? And have you got any questions for Big Ben there?
Well, I mean, it's crazy. They're only coming out but we already know, Kev. Do you know what I mean? It's not really anything that surprised anybody, them coming out with that. So it's what they've actually found is the important part of that we will probably not get to know of, Kev. That's the part that I don't like.
And again, Ben, you know, again, like John said there, if you look at it that point of view, what have they told us that we don't already know? I mean, again, that makes it important then that they're coming out in the first place, right? Because they don't have to. And yet they've chosen to, like Johnny says, to confirm stuff we've already known. And again, that puts it even more onto the kind of crime board, that kind of bit where we're connecting the dots up there. There's something going on. There's obviously been a change in attitude. Now's the time, but why? That's the only question.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, I've got to say, to have Johnny back on the show again, because I've really missed you, Johnny. It's just like old times having both Kev and Johnny here with me.
Thanks.
It really is. You know, it's an odd thing, though, isn't it? Because they are not really telling us anything we don't already know. Anyone who investigates this subject can very quickly find out the information. It is out there. The evidence is out there, as I say, on the X-Files. You've just got to research. There's witnesses, there's documents, there's physical evidence. It's all there. I suppose the definition of what we're talking about here is the lack of deception on the part of the authorities of the world. I think that is the key thing. We know it. but the authorities of this world are telling us it's not true. I think the yardstick of this whole thing is for that denial on the part of the authorities of the world to end, for them to be on the same page and to say, yes, it's true. And I think that's what we have in this world, is we seem to be moving into an area where it's more acceptable. I mean, I don't go along necessarily with Richard Dolan's idea that he's put forward, although he could be correct, but I'm not certain he is that somehow they can bring us down from this ledge without any ruffling of any feathers or any shuffling of any cards. That I doubt. I think but he is convinced that they are trying to spin this. They're trying to present this in a way that will be acceptable and will basically leave the status quo intact. That I doubt. I doubt it very much. But there may be an attempt to do that. It could be they are actually literally trying to condition our minds to accept it that way. But I mean, certainly that's not a new idea either, is it? Because when Independence Day came out and War of the Worlds and Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, and these things all seem to be pointing that might, the indication that might be the case. It's not provable, but it's possible.
No, absolutely. So, Whistles, you're not as excited as I thought you would be then about the Pentagon coming out. You're not getting ready for the old green men turning up.
No, I'm not, Kev. I mean, I was watching a program today, Kevin, and I think it's one of the new. It's not Ancient Aliens. It's like NASA's Unexplained Files. One of these kind of programs, and one of them was in 1967, where this UFO appeared above a school, a kid's school. Now, one of the kids was looking at it and he's asking, "What is this?" And the teacher came out and he looked. It's a good bit away, so they couldn't really make out what it was. So they went into the school, and then about half an hour later, it came back again, and the kids were all watching it at the window. So they ran outside. Now, by this time, it was about 200 yards away, and then started to come right up to almost like maybe about 20 meters, something like that, away from the children.
Was this in Australia?
No, this was in Florida.
I was thinking
1967.
I was thinking of the same one as Ben. Tell us more,
Western.
Whistles.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that one as well, Ben. You're talking about
Western,
Australia,
yeah.
but this one, they said that it actually moved through the trees without actually moving any of the branches, and it moved back as well, and then within a blink of an eye, just disappeared. Now, the kids, but they were all in wonder. Do you know what I mean? I've seen this thing now. The Air Force, they came out and they spoke to the children and they asked them all their stories and they've asked them what it was, and they were saying spaceship. It was a spaceship. But the Air Force says no, actually what it was, they were helicopters that were on doing a patrol at the time. Now, it's only now that people are coming forward because they've been ridiculed at the time. And even when they tell the story now, they're still being ridiculed because they're still saying it was helicopters, and they're saying, I know what that was. And it wasn't any helicopter. I can tell you that right now.
Did they run on swamp gas?
It might be, Kev. You never know.
It sounds
But, I mean,
like it.
that's one of the ones that's out there, Kev, that they've investigated and they know about. So they're the things that I want to find out.
But you know, you kind of, it was a loaded story, that one. The NASA files, isn't everything from NASA unexplained?
Yeah, I know. True enough.
I'm only joking, just because I shill for NASA, apparently, on the occasional show with Brendan, you know. But yeah, these shows that you get as well in recent times, you know, the increase in the Ancient Aliens, the UFO files, the NASA files, not indicative of anything in itself other than, you know, people, they like this kind of information. Look at the Blue Book show that we had on recently. You know, I had really high viewing figures, and within a couple of episodes already renewed. That's actually quite unheard of with a lot of today's TV shows, especially something on the History Channel. So we can see how people's attitudes, Ben, how people have got a thirst, an actual want for information like this.
And the Project Blue Book series is really something quite remarkable. it's the content of it is really incredible, because it's Project Blue Book was a real thing, and it could well be that the Project Blue Book was the people who Johnny's just been talking about in Florida may well have come to the attention of Project Blue Book, because Blue Book didn't close till 1969, so it was still active in '67, although it was sort of winding down a bit. But within the Project Blue Book series, you have the intersection of this other reality, that is the UFO secrecy, that appears to be it seems to be part of the plot line, which is really quite extraordinary when you consider that it's not supposed to be real. It's supposed to be something unofficial. You know what I mean? It's like the very first scene in the entire series, you have these guys sitting around the table, and there's 12 of them, and it's obviously meant to be the Majestic 12. And they got this sit in this dark room, this big table with lights around it in a circle. It's like the war room in Dr. Strangelove. And I think to myself, what's going on? You know, it's like immediately you see them, they're going over the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, and they're talking about the rising public consciousness of UFOs and what they're going to do about it. And in the very first episode, they're saying, we need to cover it up. So in the first act of the entire thing, you have this notion of a government cover-up. That's so mainstream now. And that was getting over 2 million viewers, that series. It was very popular. As you said, the second series confirmed almost straight away. I'm actually, I know someone who's involved in the whole thing, a guy called Dave Altman, who's actually involved in the production of the casting and everything of the series. And for that to come out now, the start of 2019, as soon as I saw that, and I'd seen the first episode, I thought to myself, this 2019 is going to be a very, very interesting year. I thought it's very hopeful that this is going to be an interesting year. Now, it doesn't mean that Project Blue Book is part of any conspiracy, because if you look at the history of it, indeed, I was talking to Dave, this guy, about it. He said that when T-Tip came out, when A-Tip was revealed in December 2017, Project Blue Book didn't come out because of that. In fact, it was already in pre-production when that happened. So that it was just pure good luck that the two happened to come at the same time. But obviously, I think it has helped, and indeed it's helped the series, of course, become popular, but also the series has maybe helped people see the ATIP and TTSA situation in a new light. They're seeing it through a particular lens, which makes them perhaps see it more clearly. So exciting times, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be part of any conspiracy, but we know that the AI is watching information. It's looking at the viewing figures, things like that. And that in itself, the attention that was going into that show, that might have caught people's attention somewhere else, where, you can really use that to gauge public opinion, how people actually view a specific topic. So look, what we'll do is we'll continue to watch the skies, keep our minds open, and keep on looking for more revelations, especially the ones coming from authority. Let's see if that picks up in frequency now, because what that's going to indicate, well, that's why we've got people like Ben here to come on the show, and Johnny Whistles, and we can discuss this. And hopefully all of us together, hosts, you listening out there, we can share our opinions, our ideas, and get somewhat closer to the truth. But what the truth is when it comes to ufology, and especially a government release, who only knows? But one other thing that's going to be released soon over here in the UK, and I think it's going to kick up a lot of interest in these kind of topics, is the release of Capel Green. Ben, we keep on talking about it. It's getting closer and closer, my friend. Rendlesham, our very own kind of Roswell event. It's getting close now, man.
Oh, I tell you what, it's a bit frustrating, and people have complained about this, that there is another delay on the release. People it's starting to think it's a bit like Brexit. It's like it's every time you think it's about to happen, there's another delay. And of course, as we'll probably talk about in a minute, Brexit, the reason they're delaying Brexit is because they're trying to sabotage it. The reason Capel Green keeps being delayed is because the project is expanding and it's becoming more complex. And the reason it's going to be a much better film. That's what they want, to make it as good a film as they possibly can, which means they're going to have to keep delaying it over and over again, which is a shame. But it will come. I mean, I know people have been saying that for a long time, but it is going to happen. This film is going to be released. It's an amazing film directed by Dion Johnson, assistant director Tina Megaro. Gary Heseltine, our good friend, is the production assistant, and he's the lead researcher. And it's going to have some amazing new interviews, especially with Larry Warren, who's the principal witness for the entire event. He's the guy who got the ball rolling. There's going to be some new evidence, new documents, new interviews, a polygraph examination. Honestly, Kev, it's going to be brilliant. I can't wait to see it.
I'm sitting here smiling away because along with it, not only is it going to cause waves, but the amount of infighting within UK and probably worldwide ufology that's going to happen, it's going to coincide with the release of this. That's going to be something to behold as well. Because in recent times, unfortunately, we've had to talk about this almost schism, this split in the ufology community in the UK. And it all kind of centres around the ground zero, which is Rendlesham Forest. And I expect, Ben, unfortunately, because we live in this social media world now, we're going to see as much good as we are bad when it comes to the release of this movie.
I think it's going to clarify things for a lot of people. That's one thing for certain. I think the film is going to have a good effect because it's going to basically... One of the reasons this film is being made is to address the various points made by the detractors, especially of Larry Warren's testimony. But of course, it's not going to silence those detractors. The troll crisis is going to continue. There are a certain number of people it's a shrinking number. Luckily, they're now becoming more and more fringe and more isolated and more confined. But there are a number of people who will never back down. They will never change their position. They have a personal vendetta against Larry. It all goes back to just one person, just one former friend of Larry's who had a very, very bitter personal breakup, a purely personal breakup. It's got nothing to do with the RFI or any UFO issue. And that is the source of this entire fiasco. And that's going to become very, very clear to most people, I think. Apart from the handful of diehards, I think that Capel Green is going to clear up the controversy altogether. And I'm looking forward to it. It needs to be done. And I think we're well on the way to that already, actually, because I noticed that the voices of the trolls have got much quieter lately, and they're starting to sound more further away from the rest of the community. And a good job, too, because there's too many of them. And it's not just about RFI. It's about all kinds of subjects these trolls are coming out on. And it's quite upsetting and demoralizing, Kevin, as we were saying in the break. There are more important things to deal with at the moment. We have a world to save, quite frankly, from disaster, and I don't have time to. I don't have time for infighting over petty issues. I really don't. None of us do, and we should not be prioritising this kind of thing. And I do hope that people will not do so. They'll back away from these kinds of petty little wobbles, because that's all they are, and focus on what really matters. What really matters is what we've just been talking about.
No, Ben, what matters to some is to take the time out to hunt all of our, and I mean all of our comment sections, to call us shills. Yes, that's what some people prioritise. But Johnny, aliens, UFOs, we're up here in Scotland, man. Well, we're like a hotspot for all this kind of stuff. We've got the UK's designated dark area, things like that. And, Scotland, although some might not really appreciate it, Johnny, for a small country, an even smaller population, per capita, our UFO sightings must be right up there, dude, because like I say, our skies aren't alien to these things, No,
it's true, Kev, because you look at Bonnybridge, just one of the ones itself, that is, that it's got its own UFO researcher down there. There's that many UFOs in Bonnybridge. This guy's actually made a living out of it, because the amount that appear there, Kevin, some of them are absolutely incredible. If you look at some of the movies that are out from Bonnybridge, you can see these things and that it can't be ours. Do you know what I mean? Some of the things they're doing are just absolutely crazy.
No, he's right there, Ben. And we've mentioned Bonnybridge before. I think it was the last time we were on air. But like I say, Scotland, it's no stranger to the old UFOs in the skies.
No, for a country, for its size and population, it's actually it has more UFO sightings than anywhere else in the world, and the same goes for other paranormal phenomena as well. The Bonnybridge phenomenon, the Bonnybridge flap, was really quite amazing. I mean, the people took it very seriously. They even elected Billy Buchanan to the council.
Yeah.
We met Billy Buchanan, didn't we?
That's right.
In 2016, I remember. He's an amazing chap.
He was the compere. He was the kind of, he got things going. Great guy.
Yeah, and he wants to. He's obviously he wants to put Bonnie Bridge on the map for its UFO fame, and why not? I say, good job, nothing wrong with that. But it's obviously that sometimes these things do occur at certain locations at certain times, and you get like a large amount of activity over a certain area. There's others, such as the Warminster thing, which is from a few years earlier in Wiltshire, around Warminster.
And you know what makes, well, when I hear of Warminster, anywhere around that area, Ben, I go back to my military days. You know, you're talking about, you know, the HQ for the army being down and amongst that kind of location. And when it comes to UFOs and military kind of locations, it's not that it gives it almost, you know, added interest, but for me personally, I don't know, it just seems to be something a bit more profound about these reports.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have this connection to what the UFOs are maybe watching. Obviously, like I was saying earlier, the government are watching them and concerned about how to deal with this invader, which is effectively what it is. But of course, they're watching us as well from a defence point of view. And of course, you have that huge defence training estate down near Warminster, at Salisbury Plain. And I mean, the skeptics have often said that the people who saw strange things in the sky were simply seeing flares coming from exercises and things like that on Salisbury Plain. But actually, the people there, I mean, I spoke to some of them, and they've said very clearly they know exactly what those flares look like, because living in that area, you'd see them regularly. You'd also hear the sounds of gunfire, detonating ordnance, things like that.
To let people know, you'd go out for a pint of milk in somewhere like Warminster, you cross the road, and first two are cars, and the next one's going to be a tank. Yeah. Literally, that's where you're living. It's like civilian military land. It's just a mix.
Everybody knows it around there, and everyone. This is why when the Warminster thing broke out, everyone realised immediately something strange was going on. I mean, it wasn't just like strange lights in the sky. That people were hearing unusual noises. There was also what you could call Men in Black type situations as well. A guy I know actually who lived in that area at the time. He parked his car up at Cradle Hill, and there was these strange creatures wandering around.
Can we change that for people in black? I mean, who are we to assume what these entities identify on any particular day? Ben, don't be so presumptuous. Sorry. Don't be so presumptuous, Ben. Not non-binaries in black.
I've triggered some aliens.
Looking for aliens out there. They're all around us. I'm only joking, folks. But no,
I mean, it's weird, but you know, what my friend described is really quite remarkable, because he described lights, structured objects hovering over the hill, and weird creatures wandering around. I mean, these were like what you would describe as the MIBs. You know, these people. They were semi-human, but not quite.
Yeah, there's something off about them. You know, I can't remember which TV show it was. In fact, it was a movie I watched maybe a year or so ago. Cheap kind of movie, but the way they depicted the Men in Black, yeah, they had a human kind of element to them, but there was something otherworldly too. You know, there was something different about these. You know,
no collar.
Yeah, they would often be
maybe a bit too tall.
Strange.
A bit too tall. Arms a bit long. 3 fingers gave it away as well.
There's all kinds of things.
Big hairy feet.
Like the hobbits. But they do turn up at events like this, and what they are, I mean, I'm not sure. I used to think, some people think, I used to think they're just government agents, but there's an indication they're actually not. They're actually related to the UFO phenomenon themselves. I mean, several people such as John Keel, Nick Redfern have studied this in detail.
Remember the TV show Fringe? Anyone out there that watched Fringe, we had something called the Observers. Now, Fringe dealt with, you know, this world and an alternative world that there was a gateway to. And there was a Kev here and a Kev there. Many worlds. Spoke about it with Geordie. It's one of the theories in quantum mechanics, okay? But if you think about it that way then, and go with me here, we're going full fiction on the Kev Baker show, but we now have machines that are literally opening portals to other dimensions, other parallel realities. Not my woo, science fact. So let's go down that road, and we've been told that all of these other worlds have just slightly deviated in one way from another from what this world is here. And you soon come to the realization that there's absolutely billions, bajillions, numbers that you can't even imagine of all of these different dimensions. And it makes you wonder, you know, once you have that tool, once you have that key to pick the lock, and you do start opening portals, whatever that means. Remember, we might not have the actual language to describe the science that we're talking about here, because we're going absolutely way, way out into stuff we don't understand. But what does that look like to one of these parallel realities that got to where we are just a little bit sooner? Maybe they took a decision back in the 50s or 60s that led them to where we are today almost 10 years earlier, something like that. And they can identify when people are opening portals from another dimension into theirs. You know, does that set off alarms in their dimension? What's the TV show Counterpart as well, where you've got two parallel realities just separated just by frequency, by the fact they're in just a nearby line dimension. Maybe a shadow of theirs hovers over ours, and for some reason, i.e. we punch holes into that other reality, maybe that's why we start to see not aliens from deep outside in the vast expanses of space, but literally aliens and other life forms that are literally all around us in other dimensions. That's another way to look at all of this. There you go. So that's going to be the subject of my next book. Johnny Whistles looks like he's going to fall off the chair now.
Yeah, I know. Wow. I mean, I honestly can't imagine another me, Kev. That would be really bad for the world.
Well, it'd be bad for that world. It'd be as equally bad or as good for that world as you are for this one. So
that's essentially what my books are about. I mean, I had to imagine a world. It's essentially a parallel world where things were different. That's kind of like how I envisaged my book, my 3 books that I've written, the Roswell trilogy. But you know, it's like this could explain things such as time travel and people who say they've come from the future. It's possible they're interdimensional because you don't have if they're interdimensional, you don't have to deal with things like the grandfather paradox and all these other problems with backwards time travel.
Yeah, exactly. Because that paradox thing, that was always a big kind of obstacle when it came to my fantasies about time travel. But interdimensional, well, anything's possible, right? And it's not just pie in the sky. It's theoretical. I get it, but that's what the top physicists and things like that are looking at right now. And of course, the other option, all of this is just some kind of simulation, and these UFOs are just part of the code to give us something to talk about. Who knows, folks, but we're going to be back on the other side of the break, and we're going to be coming down from near-Earth orbit and landing smack bang in Westminster. Yes, you know how I love to talk about Brexit and the never-endum. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Final segment of today's Kev Baker Show right here on Your Protection from Deception, TFRlive.com, Truth Frequency Radio. Got Johnny Whistles with us, and we've got Ben Emlyn-Jones as well. Check out his website, hpanwo-voice.blogspot.com. And don't forget, tomorrow night, right here on the Kev Baker Show, you can listen to my conversation with David Icke. Yes, the renegade that awakened the world. He will be here tomorrow on the Kev Baker Show for all of you out there. So please tell everyone, spam social media, tell all your friends, all your family, annoy people with it. Let's get everyone tuned in for what I think is going to be a pretty epic episode of KBS. Now, it's pretty epic times over here in the UK. Epic, it probably isn't even doing it justice. Because, Ben, in recent times, I have given my kind of political information over to you. And what I mean by that is I can't stand to watch even one report from Sky News or BBC because it ends up making me angry, exactly the way it's designed to make me feel. So I hand off to you, sir. And when I want to find out about Brexit and the never-endums and what's going on with these Tory party leadership contests, and the departure of Terry Mayhem, be she man, woman, or any one of the 45 other genders out there, and I say that smiling because I love her so much, I defer to you, my good friend. Tell us, take us up to speed on the shambles that is British politics.
Well, shambles is the right word, Kev. And, you know, I never thought, I kind of thought this would never happen. I mean, Theresa May appears to have had a staying power that never, ever seen prime minister before. I mean, she really should have been gone years ago. I mean, when she was, I was going to say she elected. She's actually never been an elected prime minister.
She had that much staying power. She was almost sponsored by Viagra.
Either that or Duracell.
Yeah, one of the two. The Maybot, though, she finally showed emotion out on the kind of steps of Downing Street. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She finally started. She didn't cry when the Grenfell Tower fire happened, or all these other things that happened. She didn't cry over that, but she did cry when she was being kicked out. But I tell you what, she's never ever been elected. She took over from David Cameron, but she was chosen by her party. And we in Britain, I mean, unlike our American cousins and most other countries, we don't actually have an elected head of government. The head of government is simply selected by the ruling party in House of Commons, our lower chamber. And she was selected by her party to be prime minister. She then held a general election to try and, when she was 23 points ahead in the opinion polls, and she lost it. She lost that election. But she managed to hold on to office by forming an alliance with the Democratic Unionist Party, which gave her a tiny little majority. And then I thought to myself, that can't last. Give her a few months and she'll be out. Well, she lasted and she lasted, and she went into Brexit. She's survived any number of attempts to unseat her. And finally, the other day, she came out of Downing Street, and she announced she's stepping down. And on the 7th of June, she's going to be replaced by another Conservative leader. That leader will then officially become prime minister the following month.
And of course, this is, she's the second prime minister now to fall on their own sword because of Brexit, right?
Yeah, David Cameron resigned when he pulled the referendum, and I think he just wanted to head off UKIP voters, get them back to the Tories. And whoever comes after Theresa May, maybe try and do the same thing. I don't know, but I've got a feeling they're going to put old Bojo in there, Boris Johnson, and he's. I mean, compared to all the others, he's the bookie's favourite. He's most likely to win.
Here's where I come from, Ben. I trust none of them, so I go after all of them, and like David Icke has taught me over the years, the faces, they come and they go. They change over time, but the agenda always remains the same. So bearing that in mind, I look at the current kind of lineup, the usual suspects, all the people who are putting their hat into the ring. Jeremy Hunt rhymes with something else, and that's surely what he is. He's one of these candidates, right? So I look at all of them and I think, come on then. Who's going to be the best entertainment that we can have? Because we know they're not going to listen to a word we say. Brexit proves that. So Bojo, for me, because he is like an absolute social hand grenade. You throw him into a room of people and you don't know what's going to go off, dude. He's absolutely crazy. Trump likes him. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll let people make their own mind up. He's another one that I don't trust. But if we're going to have any of these characters, right? And bear in mind, this is a guy, a conservative no less, that actually won the London mayorship. Now, that we laugh when we joke about Bojo, but to do that, Ben, I mean, that took some doing. And the reason I bring that up is because maybe they might look at him as somebody they can use and push to bring the country back together again, while, of course, in the background, we get nowhere closer to Brexit. Yeah,
I mean, but Boris Johnson, as you just said, he does have something that most other politicians lack, and that is personality. Mm-hmm. He has a charisma about him, and if he becomes prime minister, at least we can have a laugh.
But he's a Bilderberger, like you said. So there's one box ticked. He's one of the Bullingdon boys. So he went to school with Cameron. He's burnt money in front of homeless people. Makes him a sicko. Makes him perfect for high office, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not encouraged by him, to be honest. I mean, I'll give him a chance, like I give everyone a chance. But if he turns out to be just another a brick in the wall, then I won't be at all surprised. Based on his background, as you mentioned, he's in the Bilderberg group. He's attended their meetings. He went to Balliol College, Oxford, and he was a member of the Bullingdon Club. And as you said, they're capable of some truly antisocial behaviour. They killed a tortoise. There used to be a tortoise, a 150-year-old tortoise called Rosa Luxemburg, that used to live at Balliol College in Oxford and just used to wander around, and it was kind of like the mascot of the college. That disappeared. The tortoise disappeared, and she's never been seen since. She's now presumed dead. And the Bullingdon Club appear to be the prime suspects for killing us. A lovely old tortoise, I think, which is a horrible thing to do. They humiliate homeless people. They cause a lot of antisocial behaviour. The Bullingdon Club is, as you mentioned, David Cameron was in there, same year as Boris Johnson. Also, there was David Dimbleby, who used to present Question Time. He was that rather officious little individual who used to present Question Time. And so really, what really is going to change with him? I think the one thing that could change is it could bring a lot of people who voted UKIP or the Brexit Party back to the Tories. I think maybe that's why they're trying to get him in there. But it'll all be a scam. I hope nobody falls for it.
Well, before I get your thoughts on the Euro elections that we've just had, Whistles, you know, Bojo, you're a big fan of Bojo, right?
Kev, I absolutely detest the guy. Honestly, I really do. Kev, you were talking about him getting voted for the mayor of London. Now, do you honestly think that one poor person who stays in London or one homeless person stays in London that voted for that man?
Who knows?
It would have been all the rich people like Boris Johnson that have got 2 golf balls in their mouth when they talk. You know what I mean? You can't understand it. Oh, yeah. Kev, that guy is an absolute nutcase. Can you imagine him becoming Prime Minister?
Aye.
Can you imagine that? It would be, honestly, the laughing stock. Really would it be a laughing stock? As you say, he really is. He's a grenade. He's a bomb waiting to go off somewhere.
You see, in a world where Donald Trump can be ruler of the free world, president of the US, absolutely Bojo can take the reins over here. And remember, they're just a face. They're just a suit. They're just in there to head up the company. And of course, the real power, remember, they go to the palace first to ask permission to rule Her Majesty's government. The real power in the world, you know, that doesn't change. Mm-hmm. And that agenda, you know, one of the real cornerstones of the agenda, Ben, we've seen it being formed in recent years, and that's the EU. And never has there been a time when the EU's really been on such a kind of shaky hook. And we've seen the European elections and the Brexit Party, a party that only formed about 6-7 weeks ago. Nigel Farage was the front man. And basically, they won more votes than the Labour and the Conservative parties combined. And we can see how people in the UK, they're pissed that they've seen the fact that their democratic, you know, vote when it came to the never-endum, the referendum. Politicians don't listen to us anymore. We know that. We've known that for years. However, more and more people are waking up to it.
It's a very educational experience, and I think in the long run it can only do good. However this ends, I think people are learning an awful lot from it. A lot of people are pointing out how frightened they are by this situation, the way that the government is essentially ripping up our vote in our face, the way that they've managed to cajole millions and millions of their fellow citizens into signing petitions to disenfranchise us. That's frightening. But all that this reveals, all that's happening, what we're frightened of, is a situation that has always existed. It's just now we can see it.
Yep.
That's what's so for me, the really frightening thing was when people couldn't see it. The fact that people can see it now is a very, very good thing. As for the Euro elections, I mean, yeah, the Brexit Party is mostly at the expense of UKIP, actually, ironically, that it actually became so successful. But I personally did not vote in the Euro elections because I boycotted them. I mean, I had to think about it. I wasn't sure what was the right thing to do, but I don't really feel I want to take part in this this hoax, which is something that we shouldn't even be involved in.
Good man.
This is an election that we shouldn't even have had to be involved in because we're supposed to have left by now. In fact, there's a court case going through the High Court at the moment indicating that we actually did leave on the 29th of March and the government are pretending we're in the EU. And
it's
that's looking quite rosy.
It's like the political Mandela effect of the century. We're not really in there, but they just pretend we are anyway and stick their fingers in their ears. And they say that we'll be out by October 2019. Who knows, folks? Who knows? A lot can happen between now and then. But across Europe, you know, you've seen a lot of countries kind of given rise to what would be regarded as nationalist, anti-globalist kind of movements. And people don't want this, not in its current shape and form, Ben. You know, we are in 2019 and, you know, obviously it's a no-brainer with our interconnectivity through the internet and things. We are already a global civilization, you know, so I'm not kind of throwing the whole idea of some kind of government level stuff going on at global level, But the way it's shaped right now, with the people that are trying to pull it together, we know it's not for the benefit of us, dude. And that's why I love to see these spanners been thrown in the EU machine works, you know?
Yes, I mean, I'm very pleased by what's happening. And as we were talking about earlier, things do happen which they don't want. They were not planned by them, and they really don't want them, yet they happen, and that's good. It's a good sign. It means that there's forces for good at work in the world as well as evil, and their plans don't always come together. And to be honest, the last 3 years, to be honest, things are looking pretty rough for them. The Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the deep state, they're suffering. There's a lot happening which they didn't intend, and that's good. Bring it on, I say. I mean, to be honest, whatever happens now in the Brexit situation, they're going to end up looking bad. The government are going to come out looking really, really bad, and good. That's what I say. There's no way out for them, and that's how it should be.
Absolutely. So if it isn't Bojo, I mean, do you think there's a chance we're going to get a general election, or we're going to see a change of the leadership, the parties will change? Nothing's going to change again, but are we going to see that kind of thing now, Ben?
There has to be a general election at some point. There has to be, because really, I mean, I say that. I
because elections work so well in the UK. The one that we did have, you remember that one saying we were leaving the EU? Yeah, I mean, that went so well that people must be really, absolutely overjoyed at our democratic system over here, Ben. That's going to make them rush to the polls, right? Because they know what they say counts. I mean, their vote matters. Not.
Oh, that's exactly. It's so obvious. I mean, it's been a revelation. It's been a frightening revelation for many people, but they're only seeing what's always been the case. Now they understand it. That's good. That's good. They've learned. People are learning things. There's a lot less apathy than there used to be. This is really, it has galvanized people. It's got people behind an ideal. It's got people behind a mission. And I know it's not the final answer. Brexit is not the final answer. There's a lot of other things. And there's the Lisbon Treaty, which has got to be repealed. There's the military unification plans for Europe in the post-Brexit world. There's all kinds of other things. And of course, then the powers that be aren't going to give up just like that. But it's just so encouraging to see people stand up and resist. And for the first time in these last 3 years, in my lifetime, certainly, there is a viable opposition. There is a viable, genuine opposition to globalist rule. So good job.
My mate Tommy Robinson, he didn't get in. You can imagine, Whistles. I was crying last night when I heard that. I was perplexed, dude. I mean, come on, everyone loves Tommy, right, Johnny?
No, I know.
He's just
he's rattling everybody up again, Kev. Do you know what I mean? The hate's all starting again. I don't watch him because I honestly think it's all. I don't mean it's an act, but it's just what he's doing. It's just all wrong, and I never watch him.
Yes, but I'm with you there, Whistles. And again, I'm with you. Even act, fake, real, doesn't matter. Agitating, and that certainly ferments into some division. And we know who wins out of division. It's not us.
Talking about division, what about the independence? Right? We voted for that. We never got that. Now, we are supposed to be British, according to everybody else in Britain. We're supposed to be British.
Here he goes, Ben. Here he goes. Get ready, dude.
But I go down to England, and I can't spend my money because they don't take Scottish money. Now, what part of British is that?
That's more an ignorance at the kind of banking level, yeah. But that's just the people. They're meant to, yeah. Again,
it looks different, but it's the same.
You're right, Whistles. I've had that myself. I've had it, Whistles. I had a good scam at one point as well. Can't remember if it was like our 10 pences or something, but putting your jacket in at the local nightclub down in Nuneaton. One of our coins looked very much like an English 50 pence piece or a pound at the time. In fact, it was our pound notes, Johnny, right? They'd moved away from pound notes onto the pound coins. So you handed over a pound note into the cloakroom and you usually got something like £4 change. But it was only a pound note because the English were that used to dealing in £5 notes. So it does have its advantages at times, John.
Yeah.
You see, you
I
could have
know,
struck
mate.
a blow like Wallace there, albeit a slow one, Johnny, but, death by 1,000 jackets, man.
You can tell now, Kev, with that stuff. It's made with that plastic.
But look at
that slips out your pocket.
Look at our so-called nationalists up here, right? And you know me, I'm not political, but Scottish National Party, you would think they've got Scotland's best interests at heart. But really, in reality, the first thing they want to do, if we ever get our Brexit, is go ahead with another referendum, or as you might as well call them, never-endums. And then she's going to go to the EU. She's going to take the knee. Yep, she's going to bow to the EU and say, "Oh, please, EU overlords, please, please, please take Scotland into your grasp." Yeah, that's true independence, right? They've got to be the most back-to-front nationalist party in the world.
Yeah, I mean, Ireland at least got almost got 100 years of independence before they were sucked in. I mean, it's a frying pan and fire situation, and Wales is exactly the same because I actually used to be a Welsh nationalist. I went through a phase when I was a Welsh nationalist.
Did they give you a dragon when you're a Welsh nationalist?
Do I what? Sorry.
Did they give you a dragon?
Oh, you get the flags and everything. You get all that, and I was really into that. But of course, Welsh nationalism today is almost universally, or almost all of them are federalists, which means they want kind of the same thing that Sturgeon does. They in fact they were talking about a single stage transfer of sovereignty from the United Kingdom to the European Union, and I thought to myself, that's not freedom, that's not independence, that's the opposite of it. And I can't believe there's so many federalists in Wales.
Sturgeon.
Almost all the Welsh, almost all that we want out the UK, and now federalists who want into the EU. And I thought to myself, they're doing the same in Catalonia. Do you remember all those demonstrations?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
Catalonia joining the EU.
When we have our big kind of independence parades over here, makes me laugh. It happens like 5-10 minutes from where I live and head to Glasgow Green, but you see people with like split flags, and it's the saltire, and it's got like the EU golden stars and blue on the other bit as well. But something else you also see is a lot of Catalonia flags, and there's a lot of solidarity between the people fighting for independence here and the people fighting for independence over there. And bear in mind, I mean, what happened to didn't one of their politicians, like the head dude, have to go on the run? He ended up having to hand himself in and things,
It's like he was in jail, and maybe they threatened to put him in jail for treason or something. Because what's his name? I can't remember his name now, but he was the prime minister of Catalonia, the guy who issued the Universal Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know he's now back in his country, I think, but he was in big trouble. He was really in big trouble. I mean, it was awful. They had the Guardia Civil, the police force was in there, and they were like beating people up who went to polling stations and things like that. They were being really brutal.
Yep, and you see what's going on in France right now with the yellow jackets and things like that. People aren't happy with globalism and the EU in its current form. It really isn't. And that Juncker, seen a clip of him just in the past couple of days, and he's talking about idiots. The people in Europe that he was unelected to rule over, us idiots that don't want to come together under this EU umbrella. Stupid people. That's what he was calling these people that never elected him to that job. That's how these people view us. It's not about us, folks. Truly isn't. And I know all of you out there, you don't need me to tell you this, but we still need to wake more and more people up, especially at a time when so many of the air quotes truth community got sucked back into this left-right paradigm. Trump, love him or hate him, one thing he did do for the worse, in my opinion, was convince a whole heap of people who had woke up previously to the fact that the agenda moves forward, doesn't matter who fronts it. Well, they got sucked back in it. It's clever. It worked. But what's really changed? We still seen him rushing to bomb Syria after a false flag chemical attack, the same way Obama would have done and the same way Bush before him. We still see him cozying up to Israel, and we're getting closer to a war in Iran. Things that we've seen with Obama and things that we've seen with Bush as well. All of these people, they're all the same. They're pushing this one agenda, and that's why, despite it being almost like sucking on onions for us talking about political paradigms, we still have to wake more people up to it. And it was encouraging to see so many people at the EU elections and local elections recently saying that, none of us represent any of it, or none of the options represent any of the people in the UK anymore. But if I was going to go full conspiratorial, think about it. Because if we are heading towards some new world order, some global government, and the EU as one of the kind of cornerstones of that isn't working, well, they still want to take us to global government. You install people like Trump, buffoon. You install people like Bojo, bigger buffoon. You have people like Macron, groomed from the age of 15, Rothschild banker. And you make politics so ridiculous and so blatantly rigged to the point where nobody wants to vote anymore. So what do? Well, that leaves people crying out for a solution, right? And you bet that solution, whether it includes the EU or not, it's going to take us one step closer to that world government that they'll always want to put together. So for every victory, remember, there's always something coming around the corner when it comes to these characters. Because, Ben, they play hundreds of years in the making. You look at these plans over the centuries, man.
I sort of like, emotionally, I go up and down all the time over whether things are getting better or getting worse. I mean, there's a lot I've seen that is encouraging. I mean, the very, very fact that there was the Brexit referendum at all. There was the UFO issue that we were talking about earlier on. And then you see Trump doing something very mainstream, and I think to myself, what happened to draining the swamp? You know, I think the swamp, when he said that, drain the swamp, I think he didn't realise how deep and rancid the swamp really was.
I honestly think he had his bikini on underneath his suit, ready to dive in and take his place in the swamp.
Well, I have to disagree there, Kev. I think he's a genuine guy, but he's human, and he is he has I'd say failures. I mean, he has limits, and I think he's in a pretty difficult position. Especially, you mentioned the Syria bombing, and I was very disappointed when that happened. And I got the feeling the fire in Trump Tower just before that happened was connected. Especially if someone was killed there, and maybe they said to him, you know, you'll be in there next, or Melania, or Barron. I think they have all sorts of ways they can bring these people in, and I just hope that if he's able to, he has a way of pulling back. Because I do think he is deep down, he's a genuine guy who wants to do good. He certainly wasn't the favour of choice of the powers that be when he got elected. I don't think that was meant to happen. That was one of the things that really was not meant to happen. But I just hope that he does manage to pull back and can do what he can, because I mean, he has been scuppered of various different kinds. Sometimes I think he's pulling through and he's going to do it, and then other times I think to myself, no, they've got on top of him and they brought him down. They finally managed to get him back in the cage. So which it is, what will happen, I don't know how it'll end up, but I hope for the best.
Absolutely. And we're almost out of time. Whistles, been great having you and Ben here tonight. Really good stuff, man. Good start to the weekend. David Icke tomorrow.
Excellent, Kev.
Nice one. That's going to be great. I'm really pleased you got the one and only David Icke on the show.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope all of you are looking forward to that. But don't forget, remember to check out Ben's work over at hpanwo-voice.blogspot.com. You can get him on social media over on Facebook. He's also on Twitter as well. Check out his books about disclosure, because that's what we were talking about for the majority of the show tonight. Again, here we are talking about the Pentagon and their admission that they do investigate and look into UFOs, UAPs. I think we would all tell people out there, keep an open mind, keep looking at the skies, and watch for what comes next. Because this can't be the end of it. Doesn't feel like we've got all of the pieces of the jigsaw in front of us just yet. Look at that kind of crime board that I always kind of talk about from time to time, and I'm looking at the information, but there's almost one connection that still needs to be made. So just watch for mainstream announcements, watch for government telling you things, and always keep your spidey senses on, because you never know why they're telling us what they are. So with that said, bear in mind tomorrow night, David Icke, please, please, please be here. And Johnny, wherever they are out there, they better make it TFR.
And didn't touch that dial.